Today is December 13th, 2016. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Joel Holmstrom in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
Tacoma, Washington.
Tacoma, Washington. When's your birthday?
29 October 1969.
1969. What's your father's name?
David.
David. And your mother?
Ardith, A-R-D-I-T-H.
What was her maiden name?
Cook.
Cook. Did you go through school in Tacoma?
I did not. Started growing up in Lacey, Washington, and then moved with my mom to Georgia, and we lived there until I was about 12. She got sick, and we went back to live with my dad, and he took care of her and us. She passed away when I was about 14, and I lived in Cashmere, Washington from then on until I went in the Army.
Cashmere, Washington. Where's Cashmere located?
Right in the middle of the state, Central Washington.
What year did you graduate from high school?
1988.
1988. How many students in your high school class?
There was roughly 88 of us.
88.
Right around. I think it was exactly 88 if I remember correctly.
What kind of work did your father do?
He did a lot of things. He was in the Marines in Vietnam, and when he came back, I think his first job was driving a cement truck for Holroyd in Tacoma, Washington. And then for as long as I remember knowing him, he worked for the municipality for the city of Cashmere, Washington.
What did you do for recreation in high school?
Oh, wow. We drove around a lot in my car because I was the only one who had a car. I played football, played baseball, tried to play basketball. That didn't work very well. Most of the time when I was old enough, I had jobs. Worked a lot.
What kind of work?
First job ever that I ever had was picking and thinning apples. And then I also worked in a grocery store.
So what did you do after high school?
Right after high school, I joined the Army.
Why did you join the Army over the Navy or the Marines or the Air Force?
Honestly, I don't know. There wasn't any one reason. I think maybe at that particular time it was a little more, it may have even been more difficult. I did check them all out and look at everything, and my dad begged me not to become a Marine. So I didn't do that. My grandfather, Conrad, was in the Navy during World War II. My step-grandfather was in the Army, so really there was no push to go in any one of the directions. I'd had family members in all four different services, so mostly it was just motivation that, I think if I remember my grandmother correctly, every generation of our family has had a military member. In fact, I think every generation of our family has a military member in combat.
Now, was the Soviet Union still going at this time, or had it collapsed?
Well, that was when I was in high school. Boy, that was right around the time Reagan was president, I think, in the late 80s. So I think they were close to collapsing, because I think the wall in Germany came down in 89. Was it 89 or 89 or 90?
Yeah.
I think it was 89. So
Now, did you join the Army in Cashmere?
I did, well, it was actually Wenatchee. Recruiting center was in Wenatchee, which is about 12 miles from my home. From my
Where did you
house.
go, where was the reception station?
That was in Spokane, Washington.
Spokane.
Yeah, MEPS was in Spokane, Washington.
Okay. How far is that?
About 300 miles, a little over 300 miles.
How'd you get to Spokane?
My dad took me.
Okay.
My dad took me. So, happily, I might add.
So what'd you do at the reception station?
That was just where we took a battery of tests, physical tests, mental tests. We had the ability to choose our job from a list of jobs that they had come up with based on a lot of that. And that's also where I swore into the military.
And where'd you go for your basic training?
Fort Knox, Kentucky, in the wintertime, and I don't suggest it.
Now, when did you join the Army?
Well, it would have been in, I guess it would have been in 1988, earlier that year, and then I would have left for basic training right after high school.
Okay, you recall the date you joined the Army?
Not exactly.
Was it, what, August, September, October?
It would have been in that summertime, so it probably would have been in, well, probably more like April, May, maybe June.
It was after high school, though. So high school was that, what, May, June?
Yeah, sometime around that. I mean, it was very close to that time. I can't honestly recall whether it was before or after, but it was very close. I don't know if it's in here. I don't know if it's actually in, well.
It'll be
wait a
on
minute.
your,
Yes,
it'll be on your 214.
it sure would, in fact. What did I do with that? They had 2 enlistments, so I have to, let's see here. Place of entry, Spokane, Washington. Oh, okay, here we go. Date entered would have been 12/88. So December 28th, 1988 would have been the day I entered service, that's pretty much when I left for basic training.
Okay.
And then, yeah, but it would have been earlier than that when I actually signed up, and I don't think it says that here.
Now, how'd you travel to Fort Knox?
Let's see, they put me on a bus to St. Louis, and then from St. Louis I flew to St. Louis and took a bus from St. Louis to Fort Knox.
Okay. Tell me about basic.
Basic was probably the best time I ever had in my life, and to me it was a lot of fun. I had this, I knew from the time I was real young that I was going to be in the military, because my dad was, my grandpa was, my uncle was, so I knew I was going to do it, and so when I got there, it was, I kind of knew what to expect, and really I just kind of got into it. I forced myself. I was like, you're going to get yelled at. It's going to be cold. It's going to be hot. Just enjoy it. And so I really did. I had a great experience, as tough as it was, and what was interesting about it, because I didn't know how I would be able to react to it, but the colder it got, the hotter it got. I think it was more the more the other guys complained, somehow made it easier for me to get through, because I guess I knew I wasn't alone.
What type of training did you have?
I'm sorry?
What type of training did you have in basic?
Well, I was going to be becoming a Cav Scout, initially when we first got there was a great deal of physical training, just running doing obstacle courses, things of that nature, hand-to-hand combat training, things of that nature, and a lot of classroom training on just the basics of what a soldier does. During basic training, my basic training didn't end to go into AIT, which was advanced infantry training. It was just a continuation of it. And that's where basic training changed from the drill sergeants being very aggressive and yelling at you all the time to being more, they started toning it down and becoming more instructors where they went into higher, more refined details, how to disassemble mines or traps, the particulars of how a grenade works, rifle training, and kind of some basic training on the Bradley, which is the vehicle that scouts generally use.
Now, what's a Cav Scout?
A Cav Scout is a forward observer. Not so much in the classic sense anymore, but they do tend to spend time out front. They look for the enemy. These days, Cav Scouts, unlike they used to, carry a great deal more firepower, so they're more of an effective fighting unit. It really kind of depends on what kind of unit they're attached to.
When I think of forward observer, I think of the artillery.
Yeah, well, our job was, we would often go out and we were in front of everybody. We led the way. We went out in front of everybody. And when I was in the regular Army, I was in a Cav unit, an air Cav unit. So we had everything from Bradleys, Humvees, tanks, helicopters, and aircraft. We had everything. And so we would go out in front, and a lot of our job consisted of inspecting the terrain. We had a lot of tanks coming behind us. We got to find ways for the tanks to get through. Looking for minefields, things of that nature, and at the same time looking for the enemy, looking for hiding places, and making sure that we weren't going to walk into a trap of some sort.
In basic training, what weapon did you train with?
An M16. An M16, and we also did some training on the Bradleys, which carries a 25 millimeter main gun.
Now, what is a Bradley?
Bradley is, I always describe it to people that don't know military vehicles as a miniature tank. It has a 30 millimeter gun, main gun, which is actually also an excellent anti-aircraft gun. 7.62 coax, which is a machine gun, and tow missiles, which are wire-guided missiles that are anti-tank missiles. A 25 millimeter, it can take out a thin-skinned tank. They have high explosive rounds that can be used on light-skinned vehicles. They're not normally used on troops, but can be because they explode. So.
What's your most vivid memory of basic?
Wow. I think when I think about basic training, I think the thing I remember the most are the drill sergeants. And at first you wanted to hate them, but you couldn't. Just the level of knowledge and dedication that they had, made a huge impression on me. As cold as it was, Fort Knox was a beautiful place. I think the live fire ranges, where we would go out and shoot, but there were ranges where they would shoot live ammunition over our head at night even, and just the tracers going off, and it looked like every movie I'd ever seen, military movie, and it was just like that. And it was, I think the live fire ranges are the things I remember the most because they were the most fun.
Tell me about your drill sergeants you mentioned.
Our drill sergeants, now I can't tell you all their names, but our main drill sergeant, and again I forget the terms, but our main drill sergeant was Drill Sergeant Tedder. Very tall, thin man, loved to march and run. Those were his things. He was really inspirational. He was just the kind of guy you never wanted to let down. No matter how bad it got, you didn't complain around him because you just couldn't let him down. And he was incredibly professional at all times. I think he's the guy that had the biggest impression on me. But of all of our drill sergeants, I mean, there was such a wide array of guys, whether, you know, their backgrounds, where they came from, who they were, what they looked like. They were all so different. You know, I don't know how to describe it, but we had one drill sergeant, you would have swore he was just a hillbilly. But he was incredibly intelligent, and when we went out in the field, they got into it. And I think that's what made the most impression on me as becoming a soldier was those men doing what they did inspire you to work harder. And they knew just when to be hard on us, and they knew just when to let us have a little bit of fun and play around a little bit. But they're very inspiring men. I mean, these are career NCOs that have already had, most of them have 15 to 20 years of service by the time they become a drill sergeant. And so they're some of the most experienced NCOs you'll ever meet. And it was fun to be around them. And it was honestly hard for me not to smile and laugh a little bit when they yelled at me because I liked them. So I had a good time there. There was a lot of guys that had a hard time with it, and it was difficult on them. But I think the kind of childhood I grew up with, you know, living in Georgia with my cousins, which my cousins were always real rough on me anyways. We didn't have a lot of money, so you went out and made your own fun. Well, we went out and played around in the swamps, and I played soldier all the time. So that's what I did. So I was
Bivouac. Bivouac, basically. Tell me about bivouac.
You mean just going out to the field?
Going out
and
camping
playing?
out in the field.
There's actually a couple of really good pictures in there of that. I've got one in there of a buddy of mine and I were told to dig a fighting position. So we dug a hole in the side of this hill and lined it with logs. We found brush and stuff, and we had logs this big around, and we lined it like a little log cabin, and there's a picture of it in there. And we built it. We spent 3 days in it, and of course it filled with water. So we were up to our knees in water for 3 days, and we loved it. We loved every minute of it. I had so much fun. Our drill sergeants would go out. We had one that went out, and we're walking down a road, and he is laying underneath of a brush pile right next to the road, and nobody saw him. And as soon as we're standing there, he pops up with an M60 machine gun, which is a large machine gun, and shooting 7.62 blank rounds. But he just stands up and goes, "Pa-da-da-da-da." And he goes, "You're all dead." And he says, "I wasn't 5 feet from you." And it was fun because we got to do a whole lot of that. And we would go through and do obstacle courses and just the normal training. And this is where we were learning to do the job that we would do in the military if we ever had to go to war. So, I mean, it was long hours. It was cold. I was there in the wintertime. It was cold. It was freezing. It rained a lot. It snowed a lot. It was muddy. And I couldn't get enough of it. It was just, to me, it was fun because this is where I was learning to do what I knew I was born to do, I guess.
Basic lasted how long?
I was there for, I think it was a total of 16 weeks.
16 weeks. From Fort Knox, where'd you go?
I left Fort Knox and went straight to Gelnhausen, Germany.
Where?
Gelnhausen,
Gelnhausen, Germany.
Gelnhausen, Germany.
What unit were you assigned to?
I went to 3/8 Cav.
3/8 3/8 Cav is
Was Third Armored Division.
Third Armored Division.
Third Armored Division. Yeah. Well, when I initially got there, we got there as a group, and there was probably 20 of us, and we went to Frankfurt, which is where we started out, and then they put you in housing, and then they give you your assignments, and I was assigned to the headquarters. I'm losing all of my terminology from the years back. It was 3rd Armored Division, headquarters, 2nd Platoon headquarters, 3/8 Cav.
Now, 3/8 Cav is 3rd Armored Division, 8th. What's the 8th? 3/8.
It was the 3rd of the 8th Cavalry.
3rd of the 8th, okay.
3rd of the 8th Cavalry, yes.
3rd Armored Division,
Yes.
okay.
In fact, before I left there, they actually deactivated that, and now I believe it's in, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Fort Hood, Texas now, 3/8 Cav is.
What did you do in Germany?
Lots of stuff. I guess military-wise, we spent a lot of time in a place called Hohenfels, which is a multinational training center. So we went there one time, and there were Germans, French, British, Australian. There were armies from around the world training together, NATO allies, training together for wartime in that area. Our assignment was a place called the Fulda Gap, which is basically two mountains, and there's a gap between them, and our 3/8 Cav's responsibility in the event that we went to war with Russia was that gap. And so we did a lot of training for that. We did a lot of gunnery ranges on our Bradleys. I'm trying to remember the name of the training center, and I cannot for the life of me remember it. But we spent a lot of time there, which was always a lot of fun, because getting to watch the vehicles fire, especially at night when everything would light up, and when an M1 tank shoots around at night, it becomes daylight, and it's amazing.
What's the crew of Bradley? How many in the crew?
It all depends. Depends on what unit you're with. If you're with a Cav unit, generally you have 4 people. You have a driver, a gunner, a commander, and a loader observer. If you're in the infantry, you can have upwards of 11 people on a Bradley.
Now, were you in a Bradley?
I was on a Bradley.
What was your position in the Bradley?
I started out you start out as an observer and a loader, which you learn how to load the main gun. Well, you load the ammunition into ammunition boxes. The gunner actually loads the weapon itself. Your responsibility is basically, the back half of the track belongs to you. You're responsible to organize and keep everything right. You're responsible to load all the ammunition, except for the coax machine gun, which is loaded by the commander. You load tow missiles. You would normally be responsible for unloading misfired missiles, which is never fun. And anything else that anyone else on the track needs from you, it's your responsibility to take care of it.
How big is a main gun on a Bradley?
It's a 25 millimeter. Yeah, it's with the casing and the powder and everything, it's probably about that long and about that big around.
12 inches long?
Yeah, good 10 to 10 inches long.
How big diameter? About 2 inches?
The bullet, well, the casing is 1.25 inches. But the round itself is...
The projectile itself?
Yeah, the projectile itself, I think, if I remember correctly, is a good 3/4 of an inch thick and maybe 4 inches long on a normal high explosive round. It would be. On a armor piercing round, it's actually a plastic casing that surrounds and I don't remember what they were made out of, but it was basically a spike, and it was designed to pierce thick armor and then go in and turn into shrapnel when it got through the other side.
Who pulls maintenance on your Bradley?
Ordinarily, the driver would do maintenance, and when I became a driver, you have to. When I was in that unit, you actually had to test. They made you take a test on doing the maintenance for the Bradley in order to become a driver, and so the driver's the main responsibility of the lower half of the vehicle, not including the turret, and the observer generally assists him.
What engine do you have on the Bradley?
The Bradley had a Detroit diesel motor in it, and I want to say, you may not want to quote me on this, but it was close to 1,800 horsepower. It was a monster. It was a monster, and they were actually, you could actually make them faster than an M1 tank, which has a twin turbine. If I remember correctly, the M1 tank uses a turbine engine, the same engine that they used in Cobra helicopters, if I remember correctly. But we had a governing chain, and if you took that chain off, you could go a lot faster. So.
Have any contact with the local people in Germany?
I did, a lot.
What was their attitude toward you?
The closer to a military base you were, the more friendly they were. The further away from a military base, I don't think anybody was ever mean, but you had a lot of very skeptical people, and I think that just comes from lack of familiarity with each other. It'd be no different than if the German military was to put a base right here, So. And you always have some soldiers and whatnot that go out and do dumb things, and of course people see that. So when you are out, always make sure that you treat people with a lot of respect. But I loved getting out and going around Germany. Went many places. I've been to Dachau, concentration camp, which was a sobering experience. They've got walls there that still have concrete walls that still have bullet fragments or concrete blown out of them from bullets hitting them, and they literally had a wall for different nationalities. I think Dachau was the first concentration camp, but it was also a place where we went into the places, the showers where they were actually gas chambers, but that was the one concentration camp they were never actually used in. So, and they had for lack of a better term, the ovens where they would cremate people. That was very sobering, very sobering. It was very eerie feeling when you walked into that place. But I got to go places like Nuremberg. Nuremberg was leveled in World War II. And to see the churches and the buildings that had been rebuilt. I really enjoyed Germany. I enjoyed the people. What I found out from most Germans is try not to act like a soldier, just try to act like a person and you'll be fine. And that was what all my German friends told me. Just act like a normal human being. Don't, let the soldier thing go. And you'll get along fine. The food, there is no better food in the world as far as I'm concerned. Great beer. They tend to drink their beer warm. And their beer is actually good enough to do that. So I really I loved traveling around Germany. It's a gorgeous country. It's very similar to the Pacific Northwest where I grew up most of my life. So, and there's lots to do. I thought it was very interesting. Driving on the Autobahn and doing 100 miles an hour and being passed like you were going backwards. And not everybody drives that way, but on occasion you will have that one car that goes by you at 100 and 50 miles an hour. And so I thought that was interesting. I drove a Bradley on the Autobahn once, so that was fun.
Now, a Bradley is like a half track, isn't it?
No. It's a fully tracked vehicle.
Okay, full track. Okay.
It's a fully tracked vehicle. It has a turret just like a tank does, but it just has a lot smaller gun.
You drove the Bradley on the Autobahn with the track?
Yep. They're metal tracks, but you have rubber pads.
Okay.
And tanks have rubber pads.
Okay.
And one thing about it was in Germany, I mean, you had to be very careful. If we damaged anything, of course, we had to pay for it. And so you had to be very careful, especially during training exercises. If you drove a tank across a farmer's field, the government would be paying them thousands of dollars for dozens of years for the damage.
Was the Berlin Wall still up when you were there?
It was. It came down while I was there.
What did you think when the Berlin Wall came down?
I thought it was awesome. Obviously, because you had a whole group of people that had been cut off from the world, who were now reuniting with their families. It was the craziest thing because they have these little tiny cars, like minis. I mean, and what we think of as a mini here, the mini over there, you could take that car and put it inside of a mini here. It was that tiny. And you saw these things just come flooding out of East Germany. And they all through the country. And if you saw one, you knew where it was from. And it was amazing because I got to be there for it and I got to see part of it. I mean, that's a huge piece of history that I got to witness. And being there and seeing the emotions of the entire country, because these are family members that some of these family members had never met, children that had been born that nobody had ever met, some family members that haven't seen each other since World War II. So, that was a sobering moment. That was a sobering moment. And it was amazing. And people here are watching it on the news, and I'm sitting here watching it in real life, watching it happen. And it's difficult for me to describe that moment, because I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, okay, the wall comes down, people are coming out, and I really realized, I mean, I was maybe 19 or 20 when that happened, and just really realized what was going on, and the I guess the emotions this entire country had of being one country again, and it was a big deal, very big deal. So.
How long were you in Germany?
I think I was there for just about 4 years.
What's your most vivid memory of Germany?
I got lots of great memories, but the one I remember the most was we had gone out for training, and we had the Bradleys, and we had 6 of them. And in our platoon, we got about 30 guys in our platoon, and we are out, and we go into these giant trees. There's just huge trees. And we go into this forest, and we're parking the Bradleys, and everybody's setting up. We're getting set up for the evening. Well, the wind starts blowing, and a storm rolls in. And these trees that are 1.5 to 2 foot across start falling over. And I mean, they're 60, 70, 80 feet tall. I mean, these things are huge, and they're falling over. And finally, our captain, he calls everybody in and says, get these vehicles out of here. And we drive them out of this forest into this field, and we line them up, and they call in trucks because this storm is going to get bad. And they called for 2 volunteers. So myself and one other guy volunteered to stay there with the vehicles, to watch the vehicles. Everyone else they took in. And so I rode this storm out inside of a Bradley. But those trees falling over, because it was and would hit the ground and just make this thunderous noise, and you're looking around and waiting for the next tree to come and either fall on you, or I thought, where's one of these falls on these vehicles, it's, that's a $30-40 million vehicle. We should leave. So that was crazy. That's one of the things I remember most about the country, as far as just one moment in time, I guess.
What did you think when Saddam invaded Kuwait?
I thought we were headed that way in no time at all. I knew right away we were going.
Okay, before we get there, the Iran-Iraq war had just ended.
Yeah.
It was, what, 8 years that thing lasted?
I think it's something like that,
It ended
yes.
in 88, didn't it?
I think so. The only thing I really remember about the Iran-Iraq war was that I'm almost positive that neither side ever crossed the actual border of the countries, that they just sat on each side of the border and shot at each other a lot.
Because we armed Saddam.
Yes.
Because they had taken our embassy. Yeah.
Yes.
So where were you? Were you in Germany?
I was in Germany. Yeah. Yeah, I knew right away what was fixing to happen, and that was always something I've always had a problem with, us giving guns to people. You know, because one second they're our friends, and they're our friends because we'll give them guns, and so I personally have a bit of a problem with it. But what do you do? You know, I don't think anybody really knew a whole lot about him at that moment in time. I don't think a lot of people were actually really paying a lot of attention to all that going on. So nobody really kind of knew how bad he was. I mean, we knew, but we didn't. You know, I never, it did kind of blow my mind. I never thought that he would have the nerve to invade another country in that fashion, because they just rolled over it. I mean, Kuwait's a thumbnail country. It's very small, and they have a military, but not a big military that could stand up to Saddam Hussein, and the numbers that he had.
Now, did your whole unit go to Arabia?
We did. We weren't supposed to, but we did. Initially.
Tell me about going from Germany to Arabia.
What do you mean?
How did you travel to?
Oh, well, we flew on a commercial jetliner, loaded with guns.
And you landed where?
We landed in at, I can't remember the name of the airport, but it was in Saudi Arabia.
Is it Dhahran?
It may have been.
But that's where we landed.
Yeah, I believe that was, because we went from there to.
Because you had a photograph of Kobar Towers.
Yeah, we went to
Dhahran.
Kobar Towers, which I think didn't they, King Khalid Military City? Where was that?
Now that's on northern Arabia.
Okay, because we went there too.
Yeah.
We went there too at some point or another. But yeah, I believe that's where we flew in, and then we went to Kobar Towers.
Now, did you have any special training for this operation going into Arabia?
Not until we got there. We didn't. Our unit was actually deactivating. We were never even supposed to go, and so we had. I mean, our vehicles had been stripped. Most of our base had been. Everything had been taken and taken other places, and at the very last minute they decided to send us, and we took all of our vehicles to a rail station, put our vehicles on trains. They took them to ports, put them on ships, and sent them down there, and they said when the ships are this close, we're getting on planes and going. We had almost no notice, so it was a very, very quick snap decision to go.
Still the same unit, 3/8 CAV?
Yes. Yes, and then, so we flew there. In fact, we went so fast, we were still wearing green uniforms. We were still wearing green camouflage, and wore green camouflage for, we didn't get actually the chocolate chips, the desert uniforms. We didn't get those until a week before we came home. That's how fast we went. They didn't even have, we did get boots. We got the sand-colored boots, and that was about it. So.
How are you supposed to hide in the desert in jungle fatigues?
Yeah, well, we stayed inside the vehicles when they painted those tan. So,
How long you in Cobar Towers?
we were there for, I think, close to a month.
What'd you do?
Initially, nothing. We did, initially, I mean, again, there was no plan for us to be there. So initially, when we first got there, our platoon and our unit did, we did as much training as we could, but we didn't have equipment, we didn't have vehicles, we didn't have anything. So we did a lot of book learning, I guess. You know, you got your soldier's manual, so we spent a lot of time with that. Nobody bothered to learn how to read maps there because there's no terrain features. So a map is a blank. It's a white sheet of paper with squares on it, and that's all it was. We got GPSs, so we started training with the GPSs, and then we got our vehicles there, and we had to prep those and get those ready, get them painted. And then, but our officers did spend a lot of time. They spent a lot of time working on the more of the tactical kind of training. You know, they were leading us, so all they had to do was point and say, go there. And our NCOs spent a lot of time learning how to navigate in the desert. Most of the rest of us that, you know, that were less than NCOs, we just spent a lot of time prepping vehicles, getting vehicles ready to go into the desert.
How do you prep a vehicle for the desert?
Well, it's you know, it's the normal stuff you do anywhere. You clean, you make sure everything's functional. We did do some firing ranges. We spent a lot of time cleaning air filters. Sand was everywhere. We would end up taking them from, during that time, I mean, you go here, you get the vehicle painted, you go here, you pick up ammunition, then you go over here and you pick up more equipment over here. And other than that, there really wasn't a lot to do. I mean, all you could do is go through general classes. You spent a lot of time cleaning because every time you turned around, everything was full of sand. And you couldn't have that in your weapon systems or in your personal weapon. It was just buckets of sand that you were taking out of vehicles at all times.
When did you arrive in Arabia, do you recall?
Late December. It would have been late December 1989. Or, yeah, it would have been late December, I think it was December 23rd.
1990.
Yeah, it was 89. It would have been 89.
89, okay.
Or, no, I'm sorry.
90, because the war started in 91.
Yeah, 90. Yeah, yeah.
Did Saddam fire any Scud missiles toward Tehran?
He did. When we were at Cobar Towers, it was basically very quiet. The thing I remember most about Cobar Towers was down below us, two Arabian men, started digging a ditch. Almost the day we got there, they started digging this ditch for a sewage line. And they just kept digging and going and going and going. And everything was very quiet there. And I remember leaving and looking at these two guys, and they had dug this ditch in this month's period of time, about 20 feet in the sand with shovels. There was no work being done, but they were there every day, all day. And we left, most of us left, and we put the vehicles on hets, which are just big flatbed trucks, and we trucked them out to a starting point in the desert. And my roommate and my loader, same person, stayed behind, and the night after we left, they started shooting Scud missiles at those towers. So I missed out on that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think the only one of those that actually really hit a warehouse or something close by there. I'm not sure if any of them actually hit the towers or not.
Did you go up Capline Road?
I don't remember. The only one I remember is, the only road I remember is there was a major highway, just of course out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember seeing Bahrain on it, on the sign. And what was strange was on this highway, it was a 4-lane highway, just through the middle of the desert. And we were at this intersection, and there was this teeny tiny little convenience store in the middle of nowhere. I mean, look in any direction for however far a person can see in a desert, and one little store. And there must have been 300 of us that went into this little store. And the little man in there was very, very, very freaked out. And our captain went in and, of course, calmed him down. And he's trying to figure out exchange rates because we're all in there trying to buy goodies. But that was the only road I remember in the whole country, because everything changed. Everything, you could go to sleep, and next day everything looked different. Sand dunes move, almost like they're like slow moving waves.
Which direction did we head in?
We went, when we left Saudi Arabia, when we actually truly went into Iraq, we were going essentially northeast.
Okay. Because we went up Tapline Road, a 2-lane road built by the British back years ago.
Yeah. Our unit would have been, if you went from the lowest touching border of Saudi Arabia and Iraq to the most northern part, we were essentially in the middle,
Okay.
pointed almost directly at Baghdad.
You were around Hafr al-Batin?
That sounds familiar.
Because Hafr al-Batin was a point, and then we went up to the Iraqi border from Hafr al-Batin.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember.
And there's a big fueling station that we stopped at on the way up there.
I don't remember any fueling stations. I remember we had a lot of our Hammets, fuel trucks.
We had these big bladders out there, and they were fueling up all the vehicles heading north.
I never saw one of those. I don't think I ever saw one of those. We had the trucks. We had the trucks fuel us all the time, so I don't ever remember stopping at a fueling station like that.
So you get up on the Iraqi border, waiting for the war to start, and what do?
Sit and sit and sit and sit. It's constant state of readiness. Be ready to go. I can't even, I don't remember how long we were actually sitting there waiting to go. Initially, we left, where our vehicles were dropped off, we left, and we would stop and set up a position, big circle, Bradley's all in a circle, dig in positions, set up tents. You may be there for a day, you may be there for 2 or 3 days. And then, we kind of got basically set up, and it was just a constant state of readiness. You stayed close, you sat in your seat, you were ready to go, and then when they gave the command and said, we're going in, that night, they talked about the planes bombing and taking out various targets the night before we actually moved.
So start from the time the Grand War started, and what happened?
We started driving. We just started driving, and essentially we were kind of in the middle of this line that went all along the border, and it was interesting to me because when we started out, it was very sandy, very flat, and it was that way for as far as you could see. It rained one day and it looked like an ocean. I mean, there was water absolutely everywhere. I've got some pictures in there of vehicles sitting there, and they look like boats. And you didn't dare move in the water. If there was a wadi there, or it'd be like a big, like a small valley or a trench that the water has dug out, and you could drive right into it. So when it rained, you just didn't move if you didn't have to. And it was interesting the further north how the terrain changed. It started getting small bits of vegetation here and there. We saw a lot of Bedouins, which are they live in the desert. They herd goats. They literally race camels. It's part of what they. I mean, it's what they do. It's not a joke. And every so often, what was funny though is you would come across an actual patch of grass in the middle of the desert, all sand, and then a patch of green grass, and it was crazy. But you'd come across occasional Bedouins. Every so often we would drive past something. I remember on the news after I came back seeing some pictures of some real large satellite discs or satellite dishes. There was 3 of them and they were blown up, knocked over. Well, we drove right past those. I got pictures of them. Long stretches of power lines in places where our fighters had come in and our Navy and Air Force had come in and bombed things. And then eventually we started running into the oil fires.
First you cross the berm. What do you do when you first get into Iraq? What do? You just drive or what?
Essentially, once they decide where you're going, of course, you know, I'm a driver. I'm sitting in the seat. Nobody tells me anything. They just say go that way. So, you know, we initially crossed that berm where, you know, there's that giant mound of sand, and they'd cut a hole through this giant mound of sand. We, of course, drive through it, and it's real foggy that day, in fact. It essentially, I mean, you know, the commanders, the sergeants, the platoon leaders, platoon sergeants, they're just trying to keep everybody in line. You know, you spread out in a big line. In the desert, there didn't seem to be a lot of you didn't really have to set your vehicles up, you know. We were just basically in a straight line, put Bradleys, and then just behind us were tanks, and just behind them were mortars, and then everyone else would be right behind them. You had a kind of a formation, but it was a really long line because you could see so far. You didn't have to. There wasn't a lot of point in trying to position these vehicles any other way, really. They honestly, I don't think they really, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about what was going on. All I can see the guy to my left. In a Bradley, the driver really can't see very well to his right. So it just, you know, I mean, that's really about all it was to me as far as what I remember. We'd go for a period of time, and then when we stopped, each individual, depending on where we stopped and how long we were going to stop for, is how we set up. There were many times where we had just a giant circle where you'd have a tank and a Bradley, tank and a Bradley, tank and a Bradley, and then of course all the people in the middle. You know, you may stay there for an hour or two or however long. You know, once we started going, it was pretty much pretty focused and a very quick movement. You know, we started going and it was go, and it was time to move. And in fact, I think we moved as an army or group of armies. I think we moved faster and farther than any other army in history had ever done during a war. So,
come in contact with any Iraqi military at this time?
Initially what happened was the first day we came across about 100 what I'd call as conscripts, I guess, just civilians who had been pressed into service. They had abandoned their positions, they'd abandoned weapons, and they were swinging anything that was, whether it was a rag or underwear or whatever that was white, and they were just surrendering by the hundreds. They had no desire to fight whatsoever. They wanted to go home to their families, and that was it. And for the first while, that was what we came across. I mean, I almost ran over one of these guys. He was sleeping in the middle of the desert, and my BC Bradley commander just hard right. That's all he yells into the microphone. And I turned, and if I hadn't have turned, when we got out of the vehicle and started getting this guy, and I got up and I lifted my hatch up and I looked behind us, and my tracks had gone like this, and if I'd have gone another 10 feet forward, I'd have ran him over. And I was just like, man. And we ended up finding 3 of them laying out there in the middle of the desert like that. So I got pictures of one of them sitting on the front of my vehicle from inside, and you can just see his hands tied behind him, and we take them and drop them off with the MPs, and then they would take them and do whatever they did with them. So, but most of those guys just, they didn't want to do anything. They didn't want to fight. They were civilians pressed into service. Eventually, we did come across one evening, late in the afternoon, we came across a Republican Guard unit that nobody even knew existed. That's what we were told afterwards. Nobody knew they were there. Nobody knew nothing. And I can't guarantee this for sure, but I think my vehicle was actually the very first one to get shot at. We're driving along. Nobody's saying anything on the radio, and this little poof of black smoke goes up in front of my vehicle. And I'm like, did you guys see that? And then all of a sudden, they start going nuts, hollering missile drill. Well, there's 3 guys over here shooting RPGs at us. And so I start swerving back and forth, which is a missile drill. Just keeps them from locking onto you, or an RPG really can't lock onto you, but it keeps them from getting a good shot. And my BC had said that right after I had turned back to the left, that another one went off right behind us. If I hadn't turned, we'd have gotten hit.
Your BC?
Bradley Commander.
Okay, Bradley Commander, okay.
And so I'm doing this, and our gunner is shooting, and then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. And the tanks, Bradleys, mortars, everybody is starting to shoot. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking through the periscope, and I don't see anything. I can't see what they're shooting at. It's so far away, I can't see what they're shooting at. But they're shooting it, and you can see things blowing up out there, but you can't see what they're shooting at. So you're just kind of sitting there going, oh, da-da-da-da-da-da. What's going on? You know, and it wasn't until afterwards that my Bradley commander, Sergeant Garza, told me that these guys were shooting RPGs at us. I had no idea what it was. I'd never seen anything like that before, so I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't until it was over I was like, oh, somebody shot things at me. So, but that went on through most of the night. I think it was over fairly quickly, but for most of the night they were picking off hot spots. And then, coolest thing ever, the next morning, 2 A-10 Warthogs come flying in, and they go through this bank of fog, and you can hear their guns go off, and it just sounds like a blah, and that's 800 rounds of ammunition being shot, and they're just shooting anything that happens to be out there. Doesn't matter what it is, they're shooting it, clearing the path for us. And then right after they leave, 2 F-16s come flying in and drop 2 cluster bombs. And these cluster bombs break apart, and all these little hand grenade little deals come out, hundreds of them, and they just start going pow, 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 pow. I've got a picture of it. It's from real far away, but you can see them, and they're basically just designed to take anything out that might be in the way that could be dangerous to us as we go through. And then we started going through. Oh, I should have told you about the missile. We've all lined up in a straight line. They have no vehicles that can shoot as far as ours do. So we can sit there in a straight line and shoot all day long. They can't shoot back because they can't hit us. And my gunner goes to shoot a tow missile and yells misfire. Well, our observer, Randy, was new. He was just fresh. He was as fresh as they get, and had not been there very long, and had never unloaded a tow missile before. And so our gunner turns the turret and he raises it up. And what the loader's supposed to do is there's a hatch on the back, and he opens that hatch, and he reaches up and he pulls this missile out and dumps it out the side, and then puts a new missile in. I can tell Randy is scared. He's scared to death of it. And so I tell him, I said, well, let me do it. He said, okay. So I got to crawl out of my hatch to do it in the front. Well, when I do this, what I realize is that this missile is pointing right at me because I've got to get out of the front. Well, that's the way the missile's pointing. So I crawl out, and shots are going off all over the place. And I crawl up on the side of this, and I get Randy down on the ground, and I pull this missile out, and it's in a big canister, and I got to hand it down to him, and then we get down and we dig a hole, and we stick it in the hole, and then we mark it for the engineers that come blow it up later. And I get back in, and then, of course, he shoots another one after that, and it went off the way it was supposed to. But those are a lot of fun to watch, too. If you're, the ones we had were TOW-2s, and they would fly at an angle like this. They have a wire on them, and they would fly at an angle, and then they would sense the ground, and when it sensed a metal target, it would explode downwards and shoot through the top of a vehicle, which tends to be the weakest point of a vehicle, is either the top or underneath. And so it would go through, and those were interesting because the one that he shot a vehicle with, we actually got to see the results when we went down there, and it was just a small hole, and then all of a sudden the back of it was blowed out and looked like it had been sitting there for 500 years after it was over. And of course there's no people there. If there were, they were, I guess would have been disintegrated. I mean, that's what these things do. And but to see the results of what it did to the vehicles was pretty crazy. And then at that point, that's after we had made the turn south to head towards Kuwait. We never did get very close to Baghdad at all. But that was right after we had turned, and I think within a day or two or something of that nature, we went into Kuwait. And at that point, the Marines and everyone had already come up through the south. So, at that point, it was almost pretty much over. It was over very quickly.
So where did you stop?
We went all the way to the international airport in Kuwait, wherever that was. I don't know exactly where we stopped. We went to the airport, and essentially we disassembled everything, mothballed the vehicles. They put those on trucks and took them and put us on an airplane and sent us back to Saudi Arabia, back to Khobar Towers, where those two guys were still digging that ditch and had gone maybe 30 feet the whole time. So, but we did get to see all the damage done to the airport, and that was really crazy because we went through and kind of looked through things just out of curiosity, and one room would be just burned, and the next room the bed was still made, like nobody had ever been in there.
Where was this?
That was at the Kuwait International Airport. That was where it ran into.
Is this in the hotel at the airport?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. We stayed there, I think, for 2 nights. And when we first got in there, it was early in the morning, and me and a buddy of mine decided to go. They said everything was secured, so we could kind of get out and explore a little bit. We weren't allowed to go very far. We actually accidentally found a kitchen with a half a dozen guys in there, the Kuwaitis, that were cooking breakfast, and they made us breakfast. So that was fun. And they were nice guys. So, but after that, we flew out on a C-130 and went back to Saudi Arabia, and we're there for, I don't know, we might have been there for a couple of weeks. By that time, the Saudis had basically set up shops in it was like a carnival. It was like a carnival. And so buying things from them and seeing what they do and experiencing them as people. So I did get to go through, what was the city right there? What was the city?
Khobar was Dhahran.
It was Dhahran. Okay, we got to go in. We did get to take a bus tour of Dhahran, and I thought it was really weird because we saw tons of little white Toyota pickup trucks Caprice Classic Chevrolets, or big fancy limousine type cars. But it was crazy because we drove down and there's like this rich man's row where I just remember this. It was like a 3-story tall chandelier shop. We drove by it and went around the corner and it looked like you drove right into a slum. So it was either super wealthy or super poor. There didn't seem to be any in between. But you got to meet a few people, which was interesting. It was different. They're very different than we are in a lot of respects, but I think for the most part, most people are really the same. So,
What's your best memory of Desert Storm?
The night we left, being on the runway and getting on an airplane and heading home. I mean, to be honest with you, the vast majority of it was very boring, long, and drawn out. You're sitting in a desert. We did come across a set of bunkers that we cleared. There wasn't very many. It was basically a 50-yard long trench, and it had 2 or 3 spots where they had basically dug a hole in the sand and then covered it. That was a little crazy because they had a mound of dirt. It had to have been a command bunker of some kind, and the front of it had collapsed. So I got to crawl in there with a 9mm, and it was just barely big enough for me to crawl in. And so crawling in there, because there were no windows, it was just dirt and rocks. And crawling in there was a little scary, not knowing that there would be anybody in there or traps of some kind. But when I got in there, it had to have been in like an officer's quarters or something, because there was a bunk and a refrigerator. There was a refrigerator. Wasn't working anymore, but the generator had gone out. But so I mean, that was kind of a memorable moment. I think that was probably my scariest moment, because I volunteered to do it, and then the front of it had collapsed, so it was about 6 feet in, and then I had to turn to the left, and it was a hole about this big around that I'm crawling through like this, and so the fear of the unknown in that was a little crazy. Once it was over, I was good.
Yeah.
But that may have been the most exciting moment that I had, or memorable thing that happened to me while I was there.
Did you get close to the burning oil wells?
We did. We drove right through them. There were points where we were driving down these roads where it was oil here, and the only thing that didn't have oil was the road. So that was probably, I think that might be the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
What do you think about all these oil wells burning?
I couldn't figure out what they thought they were doing. I couldn't understand that. I don't know why they would do that. It's just because you have to know in this day and age, when a war's over, the guy that beats you up is going to be the one that pays for everything. He's going to help you rebuild. So why are you tearing up? Why are you? This is your country's lifeblood. Why are you setting that on fire? And maybe they thought that it was going to cover the battlefield or something of that nature. I know there's no way they could have been prepared for what they saw. They were using, the main tank I saw was a T-55. Well, that was a tank that was state-of-the-art in World War II.
Yeah.
It's a teeny tiny piece of machinery. It's all hand operated. They're extraordinarily slow. They're very thin-skinned. They've got a very short range. This giant army he was supposed to have just didn't exist. The vehicles he was using were World War II era vehicles. So they lit those oil well fires. Maybe thinking it was going to mask the battlefield and help them out somehow, because they had no concept of the weaponry that the United States has. or had, during that period of time. I just don't think they had any concept. I mean, it was pretty evident when our aircraft went in there, and they're just shooting anti-aircraft guns in the air. They can't see anything. They don't have any radar. That's already been taken out. So they're just shooting to be shooting, and that may work against Iran. But, our stuff can, I think a main battle tank can shoot, close to 4,000 meters. That's a long ways away. That is a long ways away. And I think that's maybe 3 times the distance that one of their longest range vehicle was. So,
What's your worst memory of Desert Storm?
It's the worst memory, but it's also the funniest. Well, my worst memory was when they told us, actually the worst moment in time was when they told us that they were shooting Scuds at Cobar Towers, because my friend and my roommate was there, and we had no clue. We had no clue if something had happened to them, and it was a long time before we found out. So that was a really scary moment. That was probably the worst as far as how we felt, because not a lot of people talking at that time. We had a half a dozen guys there, and fortunately, none of them were hurt. Hearing about that. I think the worst, funniest moment I ever had was, in the desert, you have a hole, you use the restroom, and walking out there and hearing all the chattering, and then you shine a flashlight down and there's these giant bugs in the hole. We came back one time and there was a lizard that was maybe 2.5 feet long sitting on my duffel bag in our tent, so that wasn't very fun. Most of the time, I think it was very boring. As you see the World War II movies, I'm sure that there were times where those guys were just sitting there going, ugh, you're not always fighting or anything like that.
So you're in Cobar Towers 2 weeks to go back to Germany.
I think we were there for a couple of weeks. And
what do you think going back to Germany, what you had done in Desert Storm?
Honestly, I think this is going to sound weird, but it was almost a letdown, because we had gone so far, so fast, and done so much in such a short amount of time. We were very proud of the fact of what we had done. I don't think it hit me until actually a long time later what we had liberated an entire country in a matter of days. From the day we went in, it was such a short period of time that we had accomplished what we did. So we were very proud of that fact. We were a little upset that we weren't allowed to take Saddam out, because by that time, we knew what kind of man this was. A lot of people call it a mistake to have been there, and it's never a mistake to remove something like that. No matter what you get comes behind it, there's nothing wrong with removing that. If what comes behind it is worse, you remove that too. But you can't just let somebody be that way. I mean, he and his family were some of the most abusive, and I don't even think dictator is a strong enough harsh word for that man. Ultimately what happened to him is what he deserved. But we felt good about what we had done for the people of Kuwait. We understand we're protecting interests, we're protecting political things, and there's money involved, but ultimately it comes down to those people. The 5 Kuwaiti guys that I sat down and had breakfast with, who fed me breakfast, and who were so grateful for what had happened, and that the Iraqi army was gone, and all the stories you heard of what had happened while they were there. There's immense amount of satisfaction from that, of course. you know, I joined the ranks of the men in my family that had been in combat. My son is currently in the Army. He's serving in Texas. He's been in Alaska. You know, I hope he knows. I hope he never knows that. You know, and so we'll see. He's got about a year left. So we'll see if he stays away from that.
So you were in so when you left Germany, you came back to the States?
Yes. I went to Fort Stewart, Georgia for about a year. And then I got out of the Army, and my wife at the time and I moved to Washington. It was awful difficult to make it during that period of time, so I actually rejoined the Army. And then I spent, let's see, I spent a couple of, well, let's see, where did that go? Now I'm trying to remember. I went to Fort Riley, Kansas. When I went back in, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and then I ended up in Fort Stewart, Georgia again. And then that's where I left service the second time.
So when did you get your discharge the first time?
See, that's what I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, I got papers. Let's see. Oh, okay, I'm a doofus. I left service when I left Germany,
Okay.
the first time around.
And that was 19...
Or no, I'm sorry, wait a minute. I went to Fort Riley, Kansas. I was in Fort Riley, Kansas. I was there for about a year. That's where I left service the first time, which would have been in 92.
92.
Yep, November 13th of 92. That's right.
That's when you got your first discharge.
Yes, that is hard to remember that stuff. Wow. And then, oh, here we go. No, yeah. And then I went back in 93, in October of 93, and I was in Fort Stewart, Georgia until 1996.
Okay.
And that's where I left for the second time. I wasn't going to leave. I didn't want to leave, but I had gotten married and I just had a baby, and the wife was not having any of it. Because I was being a scout, I spent a good 5 to 6 months a year in the field, and gone a lot. So she wasn't having any of it. So,
When did you come to Bartlesville?
that particular wife, who I'm no longer married to, but I met her while I was in Germany with her. Her sister was married to a guy that was in my platoon in Germany.
Okay.
And we wrote letters for a long time. And then when I was in Fort Riley, I came down to visit, and of course we hit it off. And
Came to Bartlesville?
yeah,
Oh, she was from Bartlesville?
this is where they were from.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where they were from. So, and then of course we married, and we had a son, Michael, who's in the Army right now, and he just got married. And but we had separated and everything like that.
So when did you come to Bartlesville? When did you come here?
Well, that would have been in when I got out. That would have been in '96.
96, okay.
Yeah, that would have been in '96 because I came down here and I didn't leave. And then we went from here when I was out. I had been out for a little while. We went to Washington. It didn't work out up there, so we came back. I went back into back into the Army. We came back down here, and then that's when I was stationed in Fort Stewart, Georgia, and I stayed that entire enlistment in Georgia.
Would you join the Army again?
In a minute. If I could go back and do it again, I would have never left. I would have fought and fought for it, and would have done anything to stay. I loved the lifestyle. I loved being able to travel. The interesting thing is how, when you get into a platoon, you get every kind of person there is. You know, you got, I mean, I was in Fort Stewart, Georgia with a guy from China. And he joined the Army to he had become a citizen, and he joined the Army as his way of saying thank you for letting me be a citizen. That's what he told me. And, but I mean, you get white, black, Hispanic, Asian, you get all manner of different religions. You got guys that come from money, and you got guys that joined when we were dirt poor. You got every kind of person there is. So how we all found a way to get along is beyond me. But that was one of the interesting things about it, getting to travel around. You know, every 3 to 4 years you go somewhere new. So, you know, short of the war part of it, it's great.
I like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction.
Okay.
The first one is basic training.
Absolute fun. Loved it.
Bradley.
Just one word?
What do you want to say?
Bradley is tall, loud, and awesome firepower. Beautiful vehicle.
Germany.
Wonderful place.
Saudi Arabia.
Interesting, to say the least.
Desert Storm.
I guess I would say about that, a great moment in my life at a bad time in history. I think is the way I would put that.
Kuwait.
I'm grateful that we could do for them what we did.
General Schwarzkopf.
Incredible, amazing leader, absolute, tons of respect, and would have followed him anywhere.
Colin Powell.
Should have been president.
George Bush.
I like George Bush. I like his leadership. I think he was a genuine man. And I think he led us well.
How do you want to be remembered?
More than anything, I want, if people will call me a good dad and a good husband. I've been married 3 times, so I don't know how good a husband I've ever been, but my children haven't left me yet. You know, if it comes to the people I served with, I would hope they would say I was a good soldier. I would hope my children would say I was a good dad.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that unless you've got some more questions.
Well, this is an excellent interview.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
Thank you for your service as well, sir.
And again, this is December 13th, 2016. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview of Joel Holmstrom in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.